Hello, my name is James Roger Catlin. Most people call me Jim. I was born February 6, 1876, the first child of Adam and Mary Jane Galloway Catlin on the family homestead north of Freeport, Washington Territory. Both of my parents were children of pioneers. My father's family came west from Illinois in 1848 and to the Cowlitz River in 1850. My mother's family came west from Indiana in the early 1850s, later taking over the Hayes donation land claim on the west bank of the Cowlitz. My father ran a store in Freeport with his older brother Fred. They also did some lumber milling. The Catlin boys, following the example of Grandpa Seth, were shrewd businessmen and managed to make quite a bit of money from their investments. Grandpa Seth had passed on 11 years before I was born, so Grandma Agnes was living with us until her death in 1885. She would regale me and my younger brothers with tales of her youth in Scotland and of crossing the continent in wagons to the Oregon country with a large family in tow. She also impressed upon me the importance of being a good Christian. She introduced me to the Presbyterian faith, to which I would become devoted for the rest of my life, eventually becoming an elder in the Kelso Presbyterian Church. The year Grandma Agnes died, my father built a new home for our growing family. By then, I had been joined by my younger brothers, Charles, in 1880, and Ernest, in 1884. Little sister Mary would come along in 1890. By then, Dad had started his own town. He tried to call it Marysville, after Mom, but that name was already taken in Washington, so he just called his town Catlin. Freeport had ceased operating as a town several years before, so Catlin became the place to conduct business on the west side of the Cowlitz River. In 1903, I fell in love with Miss Clara Hansicke, and we were married that October, moving into our own place on a west side farm. We would have 4 children together: Josephine in 1904, James in 1907, Lucille in 1909, and Margaret in 1915. In 1907, my father died. A year later, the town he had platted was incorporated into Kelso, and the name Catlin disappeared off the map for a while, as it came to be called West Kelso afterwards. From my farm on the west side, I began to see the value of reclaiming low, swampy areas for agricultural use through diking. I helped start and become one of the first commissioners for Cowlitz County Diking District No. 1. Other diking districts soon formed, following our example. It was also around this time, in 1912, that I became the vice president of the Kelso State Bank. Having such a hand in Kelso business interests brought out a sense of civic responsibility in me, and so that fall I decided to seek office in the state legislature. I campaigned on a moral legislation platform with a special emphasis on the dry campaign, sometimes called prohibition. I won a seat as a representative for Cowlitz County and went on to serve 2 terms at the 1913 and 1915 sessions. Even though I lost my re-election bid in 1916, I continued to serve the community as best I could. We were in the midst of home front efforts for the Great War when the Spanish Influenza began to hit our area in mid-October 1918. Schools, churches, and other public gatherings were closed by order of the state health officer. But after 3 weeks, the armistice took effect in Europe, and the public jubilation led to people wanting to get back to normal. County schools were reopened the following Monday, and reclosed on Tuesday by order of the county health officer. After that, the newspapers were reporting several deaths a week, either directly from the flu or from pneumonia that set in with or after the flu. I began to feel it about December 6th. I was quickly bedridden at home with the flu. My strength was sapped, and the pain in my head from the fever was excruciating. It soon settled in my lungs. Pneumonia had taken hold too. I died on December 13th, 1918, at the age of 42. My death could have been prevented. If my family had taken me to Dr. Davis's hospital in Kelso at the outset, I would have recovered. Not a one of his influenza hospital patients succumbed to the disease. My funeral was well attended, despite the flu still rampant in the community, and I was buried here in Kelso's Oddfellows Cemetery. The Catlin legacy begun by my grandfather in West Kelso lives on, with now a street and a school named after the family and the town started by my father.